So hello, welcome to the video and welcome to Riyadh Airport, Terminal 2, if anyone's taking notes. Now it's time to leave the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I've had a great couple of days here. Fascinating place, not at all what I expected. I will make a video about my time here, but let's just say for now that it's not really quite ready for tourists, but it will be very, very soon. So if you like being one of those people who discover somewhere before everyone discovers it, then get yourself to Saudi Arabia pronto. My next destination is ultimately going to be Manila in the Philippines, but I'm flying there on Oman Air, which means a transfer in Muscat in Oman. It's an overnight transfer, so I'm a bit old to be spending the night on an airport floor, even if they let you do that. If you're looking for that sort of content, can I recommend Steve Marsh, who does that sort of thing quite regularly. So in this video I'm just going to feature the first flight in business class on a narrow body up from here to Muscat. I'll then immigrate into the country and head to an airport hotel for the night. Then I'll continue the journey tomorrow in a separate video. Travelling between this part of the world and Southeast Asia can be very, very good value in premium cabins for reasons I'll explain a little bit later. So you might be surprised at how little I've paid for this trip. I'm paying even less for the trip back. So if you'd like to see what the Oman Air intra-Gulf business class experience is like, and what it's like to leave Saudi Arabia through Riyadh Airport and arrive into Oman through Muscat Airport, then stick around.
Hi, I'm Matt and this is Matt's Planet. I aim to entertain, educate and inspire with my travel adventures from planning to execution. I'll show you how you can travel in style for a lot less than you'd think. So subscribe so you can come with me.
Riyadh Airport is now, what's the word I'm groping for here? Yes, it's rubbish. I arrived into Terminal 5, which is the newest, handling domestic flights, and it's okay. You can see it at the end of this video about my trip up from Jeddah. The other 4 terminals are all small, standalone, triangular constructions which opened in 1983 and which are really showing their age. A new terminal is under construction, which will no doubt match Riyadh's ambition to dominate the region, but for now you have to make do with these retro delights. Terminal 2 handles regional flights, although I believe all 4 of these mini terminals share the same design. This was around 3 PM on a Thursday afternoon, which was the start of the weekend. Friday and Saturday are the days off in this part of the world, and the terminal was busy. So busy indeed that I think that was a queue of people that had stretched outside of the terminal building. Inside, and you can pretty much see all 3 corners of this triangular terminal from one spot. Oman Air's desks were in the far corner. It was really crowded, and as the terminal is so small, airlines are only allocated a maximum of 3 check-in counters each, which made it a bit of a crush for the 200 or so passengers you could be fitting on each plane. Oman Air had 3 counters and had devoted one of them to business class passengers. The FlyNaz passengers checking in next door overflowed into Oman Air's space a little, but it was quickly my turn to step onto the green carpet and check in. For some reason the agent couldn't, or wouldn't, give me an onward boarding pass from Muscat, as my final destination was Manila. She asked if I had an onward ticket from the Philippines, which is a requirement for entry to the country even if it's rarely asked for, and I suspect she wanted to shunt responsibility for checking that to her colleagues in Muscat, as the airline is on the hook if a passenger doesn't meet a country's entry requirements. She told me to use the boarding pass in the app for that onward flight, but as I knew I had an overnight in Muscat and was quite keen to show the check-in area there in the video I'd be making, I didn't make a fuss. I also received an invite to the lounge, and I was off to see how awful security was. Again, I couldn't see a fast-track security lane and I hadn't asked at check-in, but the regular line didn't look too bad despite the hordes checking in, so I went for it, and indeed it was okay. An automated boarding pass check and I was straight up to the immigration desks. I forgot to turn my camera off, honest officer. So I can share that the agent actually asked me where I would like my exit stamp, right next to the entry stamp. Not sure that's ever happened to me before, and with an index finger fingerprint check, I was stamped out of Saudi Arabia. Then some bonkers developing country unnecessary bureaucracy, as another chap had to check that you had indeed received an exit stamp despite you being less than 5 yards from the desks and there being no way of getting there without passing a desk. The chap in front of me went to Dubai every weekend and had dozens, perhaps hundreds of stamps in his passport, but the official needed to find the specific one before letting him through. It was all a bit silly. Then a brief wait for security, but the usual regional ambivalence towards both laptops and liquids, and I was through. All in all, it was less than 10 minutes from check-in desk to airside, which was much better than I thought it would be when I'd first entered the terminal. You double back on yourself alongside the security points to get to the lounge, which is on the upper level. I know there's only 5 calls to prayer a day, but every clip of me transiting an airport features one, so it felt like there were a lot more. Quite a queue for entry at the top, as this was a paid lounge as well as being available for status holders or business travellers. Yet most people seemed to decline to pay the fee when they got to the head of the queue. So when I finally got into the lounge, it really wasn't that busy. And it was pleasant enough in there. It was long and thin with different seating zones. A food station to the right here, and down that far end were the bathrooms. The space did fill up over the hour or so I was there, as this was probably the peak time of the week for getting out of Saudi for the weekend. Plenty of soft drinks on offer, with a coffee machine behind, plus Arabic coffee, dates and water. Without alcohol, the drinks offering is always going to look a little bit bland. There's the tea and coffee station again. The food all had to be served to you, which slowed service down significantly and did create queues when the lounge got busier. Standard bulk catering fare, and as I knew I would be eating on the plane, I abstained. Desserts and sandwiches at the end. The team manning this station was so overwhelmed that once those items were depleted, they were never replenished. So time passed, the lounge's occupancy ebbed and flowed, and eventually it was time to board. It's an okay lounge that was calm and offered sustenance, but it's not so appealing that I'd rush to the airport any earlier than necessary to enjoy it. Heading back down to the departure level, you could see that the check-in zone had calmed down significantly since my arrival. It's really not a big space. They did, though, manage to cram in a duty-free shop featuring the usual suspects. Gate 27 that evening, boarding was underway, and in the absence of any signage, I assumed this was a boarding lane, and the very pleasant agent scanned me through. No need to obscure her identity any further. And there was our chariot, a 5-year-old Boeing 737 MAX 8. 5 years old, but as a result of the challenges this plane type experienced, Oman Air only got their hands on it 18 months before I travelled. The 737 saga is a very difficult story, but it means that this plane type may well now be the safest plane in the sky. Nice livery too. On board and into the dedicated business cabin, another airline that still does short-haul business class properly. 3 rows of 2-2 seating, and I was in, you guessed it, seat 2A. And there was quite a lot of seat too. European travellers must remember that this is a short-haul business class seat. A large screen in front of you built into the imposing seat back with a tray table underneath, unusual for it to not pop out of the armrest, and it was extremely tricky to deploy one-handed, so we'll come back to that. Water with a literature slot underneath and a footwell. We'll examine the seat recline a little later, but this didn't communicate flat bed. I did overcome the table release mechanism in the end, and it does indeed slide out a long way to meet you. Those with fatter thighs than me may find themselves supporting the table when deployed. Power and headphone sockets at a very convenient location in the armrest, along with some storage space. Above this are seat controls and a remote for the IFE under this flap. A reading light pops out over your shoulder. The other armrest has what looked like another literature slot. And there were overhead lights and air vents. I can't now recall where these headphones had been hidden, but they looked decent. I had less than 2 hours in the air that evening, so I didn't use them. But the entertainment range looked decent. Having any entertainment on a short-haul aircraft like this is noteworthy, and this choice wouldn't have disgraced a long-haul offering. A packaged, refreshing damp rag was the first service item. If you've watched my Saudi review, I'll reveal now that they remain in the lead when it comes to pre-departure service items. A lemon mint juice quickly followed. I really got the taste for these on that trip. I'm going to assume the grit in the bottom of the glass denoted authenticity rather than poor hygiene. The doors closed and the safety briefing started, produced in association with the Oman Tourist Board, I suspect. If you didn't want to explore Oman before watching that video, you will afterwards. And we achieved an on-time pushback with menu in hand. No Arabic coffee or dates though, so Oman Air's pre-departure service item count ended at 3. Less than half of what Saudi achieved. A couple of years back, Oman Air announced they would be joining the OneWorld alliance towards the end of 2024. This flight was booked partly in anticipation of that, as I'm working to cover all OneWorld airlines on the channel. I try to show how to maximise the avios you earn, so it makes sense to cover all of the options you have for spending them. But Oman Air has recently announced that they're not quite ready. Head for Points recently ran a very interesting interview with Oman Air's CEO. I'll link to it in the description below. Before they join, they want to restructure their business to a degree, which includes a restructuring of their fleet. Interestingly, despite only being a couple of years old, they may move to upgrade these 737 business seats to lie flats, as these planes will increasingly operate on longer routes as Oman Air grows. That is in part necessary because they've retired their A330 fleet, some of which went to Qatar and one of which I flew on earlier that year. All of this means that the vague scent of cost saving that I felt I detected may be real, the lack of Arabic coffee being one example, and there'll be another one later on. But they seem to be on the right path, and it's now been announced that they will now join OneWorld on the 30th of June 2025. I tested what recline there was before the service started, and as expected, there wasn't that much. It is a lot of seat with not a lot of recline. On longer flights, this lack of a flatbed will hamper them, although interestingly the CEO also said that they don't see themselves as a business class airline, so perhaps it's not going to be that big a deal for them. I had no neighbour on this flight, so nipped to the loo. It's very snug and not built for people as tall as me. A few embellishments for the premium traveller. The menu was perhaps a little cheaper to produce than others I experienced in the region, offering a choice of chicken or veg, which is okay for a 12-seat cabin on this shortish flight. A tablecloth was laid and my choice of chicken was quickly delivered. I think I expected a little more. Again, Saudia's offering was significantly superior, but it all tasted excellent and the variety of items on offer made it quite an interesting meal to consume. Remember, I hadn't eaten anything in the lounge, but I found this meal to be quite filling. No alcohol on this flight, which spends most of its duration in Saudi airspace. Oman Air is not dry, as you'll see in my video about the onward flight from Muscat, but it was a tomato juice for me here. And we seemed keen to avoid paying overflight fees to the UAE by staying south of the border, even though that routing would have burned a little more fuel, my other clue that Oman Air may be in cost-saving mode. And down into Muscat, great views of the city as we sort of corkscrewed into the airport. Oman Air doesn't see itself as a business airline, but like a lot of airlines in the region, it does see a market for conveying migrant workers between the Far and Middle Easts. So lots of flights run between those markets, almost all of which operate with business cabins, where seats in those cabins are often empty as migrant workers don't fly in premium cabins. That means supply exceeds demand, which drives the price down, which means great value can be found flying these sorts of routes. It's the same rationale as to why Sri Lankan used to offer such excellent value in its premium cabins between Abu Dhabi and Jakarta. Lots of empty seats meant low prices. In Sri Lankan's case, BA status chasers worked this out and bought up those seats, which alongside Sri Lankan's inability to consistently operate the flights they'd sold, left them out of pocket when they had to rebook passengers onto other airlines, which brought about the price hike we've recently seen. But back to Oman Air, and the total cost of my 2 flights from Riyadh to Manila was £804. And if you spread that between these 2 flights based on miles flown, this leg cost me £122. This flight on its own retails for over £500. That wasn't as good as the value I obtained on my flights back to Saudi with Gulf Air, but those videos will be along in a few weeks. I also chose to fly different airlines out and back to Manila to maximise the content I could get from this trip, but if I'd also flown back on Oman Air, I'd have paid around £1,100 for the 4 flights, which would have lowered the cost of this leg to around £85. And that's the gross cost too. Oman Air flights can be credited to Air Canada's Aeroplan scheme, which I'm a big fan of, although Oman Air's website doesn't allow you to do it, and I completely forgot to link the accounts when I checked in, so I will have to make a retrospective claim for those points. But assuming they go through, that should earn me around 6,000 Aeroplan points, which would bring the net cost down a bit. But was Oman Air any good? Compared to a Euro business offering, they were exceptional. Compared to their regional competitors, they were okay. It wasn't their lounge or their terminal, so I can't dock them anything for those average experiences. What they could control was the seat, which was good, but not great. The food was good, but not great, as was the service. And we were on time. So it was a pleasant experience I'd be happy to repeat, but it's not perhaps the peak of Arabia's offerings. My review of the onward flights to Manila will be along soon. So off and into Muscat's new terminal, well, newish, as it opened in 2018, although it really still is very nice. I had an overnight connection, and as no visa is required for British travellers, I decided to immigrate into the country and spend the night away from the airport. And something quite strange happened when I got to the immigration counter, although I was a good boy this time and had turned off my camera. I proffered my British passport, it was scanned, and within perhaps 5 seconds the officer asked me if I had multiple passports. I do, and on my only previous visit to Oman 21 years ago, I had entered using my Australian passport. For his computer to have figured that out so quickly based on just my name and date of birth was quite disconcerting. I'm sure there's more than one Matt Jones on this planet with my birth date, although my middle name probably does narrow the field somewhat. But to be able to match me to an immigration record created 7,338 days earlier was quite a feat. I was a bit concerned actually, as some countries don't allow multiple citizenships, and a quick Google when I got home revealed that Oman is one of them, although I believe that applies more to Omani citizens than it does to foreigners. But I was disinclined to deny having 2 passports. I replied that yes, I also have Australian citizenship, but that I didn't have that passport with me on this trip, which was actually true. The agent sort of grunted and stamped me in. I can't now remember if fingerprints were taken, but if they were, the question was asked before he took them, and I can't believe they took them 21 years ago. I'm still not really sure what to make of that. If anyone knows how Oman handles these things, please let me know in the comments. But he let me in, and I was quickly through to the baggage reclaim area and thence out. I was not keen to have to get any Omani currency for this 12-hour stay, so I had downloaded Oman's Uber equivalent called O-Taxi, and there were actually reps from the app in the baggage hall helping people to use the app. It seems that O-Taxi now has the monopoly on airport taxis at Muscat Airport. So for £7 I got a comfortable ride the mile or so to the Novotel hotel on the perimeter of the airport, and £54 got me a very comfortable room for the night. So thanks for watching, blah blah blah. Oh, I don't script this bit. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please give the video a like if you did. Please subscribe if you're new, and leave me a comment. Have you flown on Oman Air? Would you after watching this? And if you'd like to support what I'm doing more directly, there is a Patreon account link in the description below. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.